and I'm going to be leading you through Read Aloud for Friday, May 8th. I'm excited to read chapters 15 and 16 of Front Desk with you. I've been really enjoying this book, and I hope that you have also. So our teaching point for the day is readers will pay attention to character traits, relationships, the point of view of the narrator, and possible themes, as well as any changes to the story elements. All right, so I just want to review some of the characters and some of the plot that we've been encountering in this book so far. So some of the characters that we've seen are Mr. Yao, who is a mean owner of the motel, and he's really proving that he doesn't care about the people who work there. He cares about his customers to get money, but he really doesn't care about people. Jason Yao is Mr. Yao's son, and he goes to the same school as Mia, and Mia witnessed him being bullied at school for being Chinese. The motel guests have been developing a closer relationship with Mia, especially Hank, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. The setting is the Cali Vista Motel. Sometimes the setting is at school, and both of these take place in Southern California, where Mia's family had immigrated to. So some of the plot that has been going on. So a drunk man came to the motel, and was acting very aggressively towards Mia. He grabbed her shirt and was yelling at her. After this, Mia tries to think of ways to make the motel more safe, but Mr. Yao says it's too expensive. So that kind of shows a lot about his character. He cares a lot more about money than people. Mia also feels that her life is really different than her friends in school because it has a lot more hardship in it. Her friends' lives seem to be perfect. Jason Yao reveals that Mr. Yao, his father, said a lot of negative things about China. So that happened right at the end of chapter 14, where Jason was like, well, my dad told me that, and he said all these really negative things about China. And as we've been saying, Mia is responsible and caring. This is our character theory. She's responsible and caring because she is 10 and doing a job that an adult would usually do, and she wants to do her part to help her family and immigrants. All right, let's get started with chapter 15. Honey, we've been thinking, my dad said when I got home from school that day. I was still mad about my conversation with Jason. Maybe it's not such a good idea you watch the front desk. Clearly it's dangerous, my mom said, after what happened. No, I said firmly. That was not the solution. And besides, who's going to watch it if I don't? I will, said my mother. I shook my head. Dad can't clean all the rooms by himself. He was barely managing as it was, even with my mom, and they still wouldn't let me anywhere near the maid cart because of the chemicals. Every day, the two of them cleaned until well past sunset. They had both lost so much weight. They constantly had sweat stains on their shirts and smelled of Clorox. I can manage by myself, my dad insisted. No, you can't, I turned to my mom. Sorry, Mom, I'm not giving you my job. The front desk was my chocolate notebook, and I was not letting it go. No way. So I'm thinking that a possible theme that the author's trying to reveal in this story is about dedication to your family and how important it is to be like a tight unit with your family and to be really dedicated to helping them and people helping each other. I plopped down on the front desk stool and gazed at the wallpaper, at the spot where the security camera was supposed to go. Why can't we just tell him he has to get us some cameras or else? I asked my parents. Because he knows there's no or else, my dad said softly. I bit my lip. It's just so unfair, I said. My mother sighed. She walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. We're immigrants, she said. Our lives are never fair. My dad nodded. We have to try, he said. We have to try and accept our fate. So I'm noticing that Mia's parents have kind of a different approach to solving their problems than Mia. Like Mia's parents are kind of like wanting to accept how things are, whereas Mia wants to try and change things. My parents are always going on about fate. Sometimes I wondered if this fate thing was just something adults made up to make themselves feel better, like the tooth fairy. And really, it's not so bad, my dad said, his face brightening. We have a roof over our heads. We have each other. That's right, my mom said. It could be a lot worse. Look at Ming, my dad added. He didn't mention the loan sharks, but he didn't need to. We were all thinking it. My parents let me keep my job, but only after I told them I would make a sign saying security camera installed and put it up in the front office. Even though we didn't have a security camera, people could think we had a camera. Billy Bob, one of the weeklies, came into the front office. He pointed at the sign and asked, "Where's the new security camera?" I looked down at my hands. "There isn't one," I admitted. I told him about Mr. Yao and how he had rejected all my ideas because they were too expensive. Billy Bob sighed. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said. "But you know what? Come here. Let me show you something." I followed him out to the parking lot. The two of us stood in front of Billy Bob's old blue station wagon. "See that sticker on my car?" Billy Bob asked, pointing to a shiny sticker on the driver's side window. I squinted at the words. It said, "Don't touch. Alarm system installed." Billy Bob leaned over, cupped his hand, and whispered into my ear, "There's no alarm system." I smiled. Later that day, a small hatchback pulled up beside Billy Bob's station wagon. A Chinese guy came bouncing out of it, running up to my dad and shaking his hand furiously. He told him he was a friend of Uncle Ming's and asked if he could stay here for the night. "Any friend of Ming's is a friend of mine," my dad smiled. That night, as my mom prepared dinner, Uncle Lee stood next to her, beaming at the sweet and sour pork, rubbing his hands while the wok sizzled. I haven't even tasted it, and I know it's delicious," he praised my mother, who blushed with pride. "Thanks," my mom said. "You don't know what it's been like for me these past few months," Uncle Lee said. He told us that he met Ming working in the kitchen of a burger place. All day, we'd make these juicy burgers for the customers. You know, the kind with the real thick beef? My stomach nodded. That's why I took the job, for the burgers. But for lunch, you know what the boss would give us? A sandwich of 2 slices of white bread and some mayonnaise. The whole thing was white. "No meat?" my dad asked. "No meat." "No lettuce?" my mom asked, popping a spring roll into her mouth as she sat down. "How about some tomato?" I asked. "Nope, just white on white on white, day after day after day." White on white on white? That's not a sandwich, that's an envelope. My father shook his head at his new friend's misfortune. I'm noticing here that the author is calling, or that they're calling Uncle Lee their new friend. I'm thinking that they tend to consider family and friends of family as close to them. They're really like tight-knit and they want to help each other and stay together. "So you know what I did?" the man asked, leaning in as if to get us in on a secret. "What?" "Every day I made a delicious hamburger and wrapped it up carefully. I put it in a bag and I threw it into the trash," he said. "Then, every day after work, I'd go find it." "You what?" My mother dropped her chopsticks. Everyone stopped eating. It wasn't always easy, let me tell you. Some days my body was completely inside the dumpster, and all you'd see were my 2 little legs kicking in the air. But I always managed to find my burger in the end, he said triumphantly. My eyes slid over to the trash can in the kitchen, overflowing with potato peels and eggshells. I pictured 2 legs sticking out. "Did anyone ever see you?" I asked. He shrugged. "So, what if they did?" I marveled at the guy, at his bravery. He didn't even care if anyone saw him. That was the amazing part. I think I definitely would have cared. When I found my burger, it was the most incredible feeling ever. I devoured it right then and there. I couldn't wait, he said, beaming. I pictured him sitting on top of a mountain of trash, flies buzzing around him, feet tapping on corn cobs and banana peels as he tucked into his burger. "What's the name of the restaurant again?" my dad asked. "It's called Ray's Burger, down in Carlsbad," Uncle Lee said. "The boss's name was Ray?" my dad asked. "No, the boss's name was Yi Feng. But Ray's Burger sounds a lot better than Yi Feng's burgers." My dad chuckled. He pointed to the pen on the table. "Grab that pen, will ya, Mia? Write down Ray's Burgers. Yeah, tell your friends that is one place you never want to work," Uncle Lee said, reaching for another spring roll. I went to my room and found an empty journal. In it, I wrote restaurant in Carlsbad, Ray's Burgers, boss only feeds workers white on white on white. I showed it to my dad. In Chinese, he said, so we can all read it. Under the English, I started writing in Chinese, stopping when I got to the word burger. How do you write burger? I asked my mom. My mom frowned, taking the pen from me. 2 years in America and she's nearly forgotten all her Chinese, she said apologetically to Uncle Lee. English is more important anyways, he said, batting away her concern. My mother sighed. That's the thing about moving kids one country to another. They're not good at either language. Her words sat on my shoulders, heavy as rocks. I looked down at my feet and nearly jumped when my mother touched my hand. But she does all the math at the front desk, don't you, honey? She said, smiling at me. I'm thinking maybe Mia feels a little self-conscious about or worried about what her mom said about not being good in either language. Chapter 16. That night, I could not stop thinking about Uncle Lee and how he was willing to do anything, go literally anywhere, even into the belly of a dumpster to get what he wanted. Was that insanity or courage? I didn't know. What I did know was that when they served us hamburgers at school the next day, real hamburgers, not saltine burgers, I was bringing mine home for Uncle Lee. I didn't care how loudly my stomach protested. So I'm noticing here Mia's being what's called altruistic, which is a word I want to introduce to you guys. And altruistic means when you're putting others' survival before your own. You're caring more about someone else surviving and you put them before yourselves. Carefully, I wrapped the burger up and hid it in my jacket. I made sure not to squish it all day long. When I got home, I heated the burger up in the microwave, then rewrapped it in a napkin, just like they did in the commercials on TV. I brought it to Uncle Lee's room. Uncle Lee was delighted. He asked me whether I'd eaten, and I lied and said I had. But then my stomach betrayed me and growled loudly. Uncle Lee laughed. Come on, let's eat it together, he said. I sat down and divided the burger, and this time I shared more than just a couple of crumbs. So I kind of noticed like this whole family and their community of extended friends, they all really look out for each other and share with each other, and I think that's contributing to the theme. Uncle Lee ended up staying 3 nights. Each night was filled with delicious food and riveting stories about customers and things like their weird sauce requests. One guy insisted on burgers with ketchup and jam. By the end of his stay, our refrigerator was nearly empty. So my mom and I went to Ralph's, the American grocery store 3 blocks away. Normally, we'd go to the Chinese supermarket, but today there was a 2-for-1 cauliflower sale at Ralph's. So I noticed how Mia, or the author, inserted a really small detail here that shows how the family makes their decisions. Like they saw this sale at Ralph's, so that's why they decided to go grocery shopping there. We should really stop letting people stay at the motel for free, my mom said with a sigh. She picked up the cauliflowers, put them in a plastic bag, and tossed it into the cart. But you and Dad are so happy when they come, I said, thinking of how animated my parents were at dinner these last few days. I know, and they're such good people. And their stories, she put a hand on her chest, heart-wrenching. And they really were. All week I'd been going back in and filling in all the details in my journal. They were fascinating, the stories. But I'm worried about Mr. Yao, my mom groaned. If he catches us, her voice trailed off. I worried about that too sometimes. Mr. Yao hadn't come around for a week. We were due for a visit any time. We should be careful, I said, reaching for a box of Honey Nut Cheerios, my favorite. I think I just have to put my foot down and say, no more visitors, my mom said. She looked at the items in the shopping cart, eyes lingering on my Honey Nut Cheerios. What? I always get them, I said. I picked up the box and held it close to my chest. I knew money was tight, but surely not no Cheerios tight, right? Right? Her pause said it all. It's fine, she said, reaching for the box. Here, put that back in the cart. But I held on to it. I peered longingly at it, all those delicious honey-kissed circles on the box, the smiling bee that said nobody can say no to Honey Nut Cheerios. Well, I can think of one person. Me. Slowly, I put the box back up on the shelf. What are you doing? My mom asked. It's okay, I said. You don't want it anymore? I shrugged. I'm kind of sick of it. I turned away before my mom could see my eyes. I'm noticing here Mia's being really altruistic again, and it's confirming the theory that Mia sacrifices her own wants and needs for her family. So even though she really wanted these Honey Nut Cheerios, she knew that financially it would be a struggle for her parents, and she put it back. And she also, white lied a little bit and said that she didn't really want it, even though that's not the truth. That Sunday, as usual, my father and I loaded up the car with empty aluminum cans. You'd be amazed at how much soda people drank at the motel. My dad and I crushed the cans, put them into trash bags, and drove over to the local recycling center. I wished my mom could come too, but Mr. Yao had the rule about never leaving the motel unattended. The recycling center gave us $10 for the cans, which we took in exchange for pennies. Then we went over to the lake, where we sat and went over them, one by one, trying to find the one special penny we'd be on the lookout for as long as I can remember. It was the 1943 copper alloy penny. My dad said it was worth $40,000. At least, my dad insisted, maybe even more. When he told me that, my mouth went dry. $40,000 for just one penny? Think of all the Honey Nut Cheerios we could buy. My dad said that's the reason they were so valuable, was because there were just 40 of them made. They were made by accident during the war when pennies were converted to steel. So far, only one had been found. The rest were just out there, waiting to be found. We didn't find the 1943 that day, but we did find a 1984 double die, and my dad said that was worth $30. A double die is when they accidentally print the words twice on the coin. Anytime that kind of mistake happens, the coin's automatically worth more. I tilted my head to one side. Why is it automatically worth more? I asked my dad. He didn't respond right away, so I added the 1984 double die to our collection of valuable pennies. We had about 17 pennies in the bag from all of our searching over the years altogether. It was worth about $300. My dad was enormously proud of them. He never once suggested we cash in those pennies. They were his babies, so it sounds like he has a bit of a collection. Why are the mistake ones worth more, Dad? That's a great question, he said. He put his coins down and turned to me. The fact that a penny can be worth 400,000 times more because of mistake, what does that tell you? I shook my head. It means a mistake isn't always a mistake. Sometimes a mistake is actually an opportunity, but we just can't see it right then and there. Do you know what I mean? He gazed into the distance. Like coming to this country, for instance, he said. My dad shook his head and chuckled. I thought it was going to be very different. I closed my eyes, thinking of the plane ride over. So first I wanted to say I noticed that Mia's dad was kind of using this opportunity to teach Mia like a life lesson about mistakes and the value of mistakes. But then here when Mia's saying, I closed my eyes thinking of the plane ride over, my dad had given me my hand a squeeze and asked, it sounds like Mia's starting to head into a flashback. And asked, are you excited? I nodded, even though I was more scared than excited, but he wasn't. He was just excited. As we flew across the Pacific, he and my mom had talked a mile a minute, making plans and setting goals. My mother asked if he thought we could go see the Statue of Liberty. Sure, that'll be the first place we go for vacation, New York City, my dad had said. We'll stay in a nice hotel, get dinner and a nice restaurant. You really think we can do all that? My mom had asked. I know we can, my dad had said, beaming. I looked at my father now, 2 years later. He had grays in his hair. The creases on his forehead had become ditches. Would you still have come? I asked him softly. If you knew? He looked up at me. In a heartbeat, he said. You know why? I shook my head. Because of you. You're my special penny, Mia, he said, touching my nose. You know that? I smiled. Just sitting next to my dad by the beautiful lake, it made me so happy. I decided right then and there it didn't even matter if we ever found the 1943. But it would be nice if we did. All right, you guys, that's chapters 15 and 16. I know it was pretty heart-wrenching. So you're going to answer this short response question today. How are the Tang family's expectations of America different from their actual experiences? And make sure that you use 2 details from the text to support your response. Have a happy Friday, everybody, and I'll see you all on Monday.